has Germany given 2.7 billion euro to Lebanon. We are the second largest donor. Well, electricity is a completely different, a different subject.
Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel?
I've been accused of intervening into internal affairs, and there's only the solution of the IMF.
مرحبا، أهلا وسهلا فيكم بالحلقة 20 من برنامج نفس جديد يلي منقدمه بالتعاون مع DRI. حلقتنا الليلة حلقة مميزة ومختلفة لأنه الضيف مختلف وكمان مميز، وفيكم تحضروا هيدي الحلقة على كافة مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي: يوتيوب، تيك توك، انستغرام وفيسبوك، وفيكم تسمعونا كمان بودكاست على سبوتيفاي وأنغامي. اسمحوا لنا الليلة نقدم الحلقة باللغة الإنجليزية لأنه ضيفنا أجنبي ما بيحكي غير إنجليزي، وأكيد رح تكون مترجمة كرمال تقدروا تتابعوا كل تفاصيلها. We do not speak German and we do not intend to learn it tonight. But during this episode, we want to know more about Germany's engagement in Lebanon, its strategic position and its foreign policy. Why Germany? Because the Lebanese public may not be aware of the numerous projects and programs supported by Germany in Lebanon, and media coverage about the role that this European country plays locally, especially in relation to political reform, is very limited. Our honorable guest, the German ambassador to Lebanon, Mr. Andréas Kindel, accepted our invitation tonight to host him on Nafas Jdeed, but on our own terms, since the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a major supporter of DRI and its many activities in Lebanon. The ministry is also supporting some episodes of Nafas Jdeed. Your Excellency, Mr. Kindel, welcome to Nafas Jdeed.
It's my pleasure, and أنا متأسف أن لا أستطيع أن أتكلم اللغة العربية بطلاقة. Therefore, I also prefer to have this discussion in English. It's much easier for me.
We appreciate the fact that you insisted on being with us on set rather than hosting us at the embassy or at your residence. We find this unusual. Why did you insist on being on set?
I've seen some of the episodes and I like the setting. I also think, when you come to my residence, it's a different relationship as if I come to you. And just as you said in the beginning, German government supports Democracy Reporting International, and not only in Lebanon. I've had in my previous position close contact to Democracy Reporting International in Germany, and we've done projects together. But it is also important for me to be able to say this is fully transparent, and you're not pardoning me for anything or I'm not taking any advantage for this discussion, so let's be rough.
Talking about transparency, would you allow us not to be diplomatic in our questions? And we leave you the freedom to answer. We have so many questions. Our fellow, Mr. Michel Dawood, he's a young media maker with DRI, and he will be joining our discussion, and he has a lot of questions.
Perfect.
So shall we start?
Absolutely, let's start.
First of all, Lebanon, such a small country, which many Germans cannot even identify on the map. Why is it important for Germany to invest in on many levels?
I don't think many Germans cannot identify Lebanon on the map. We have a lot of Lebanese also in Germany, and Lebanon is known. But you're right, it's a small country, and how to explain why we invest so much into Lebanon? We have, for a long period of time, had two most important issues. One, and they are under the cover of what we would like to see is namely a stable Middle East, a stable Levant, and a stable Lebanon. So one of the issues since 2011 is the influx of Syrian refugees and the Syrian crisis, internal war and the Syrian regime in Syria, which does not allow to come back to a normalization in the relationship. We are full of recognition of what Lebanon, the Lebanese government has done for the large number of Syrian refugees coming to Lebanon, and this is a endeavor and a task we would like to support.
Okay, but what's the benefit for Germany in investing in Lebanon?
The benefit, as I said in the beginning, I think what we need to see, what we want to see is a stable Lebanon. We don't want to have like a permanent volcano of unrest or a difficult situation in a very strategic place. This is our neighborhood. This is the Mediterranean Sea. So we have interests not only in Lebanon, but also in other countries around the Mediterranean, just as we have an interest in the neighborhood east of Europe to be a stable neighborhood for us as Europeans. And then for Germany, I think it's clear, and it's been criticized sometimes, especially in Lebanon. We have a special historic relationship with Israel. Okay. And of course, we have no interest whatsoever that there is a military escalation or a security escalation between Lebanon and Israel. So these used to be the main configurations of our interest. And since 2020, maybe I can say this, since 2020, Lebanon in itself, not just because of the Syrian refugees, not just because of the neighborhood to Israel, has become a partner country for our economic development cooperation. This is one of the very few countries in the world. And it allows us to use all the instrument box, all the toolbox we have in economic development cooperation to work together with Lebanon.
Okay. After the maritime border, do you think...
we are safe now.
You think we are safe now?
I think it has contributed to a very large extent to a objective and subjective, but objective feeling of safety and security towards the south, absolutely. The idea being that if there are economic interests, partnership, neighborhood,
there would be no political or...
less, and there will be less probability of an escalation, because there's something to lose.
Talking about investment.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how much Germany is investing in Lebanon?
Investing in a sense of human resources and development, yes. I cannot, we don't have a lot of investment by companies, but we have an investment of Germany as a state and private people in the development area and stabilization. So I think since 2011, roughly, we have, as Germany, given 2.7 billion euro to Lebanon.
That's a huge amount.
It's a huge amount, and a very large amount of this in the last 11 years has been under the framework of the Lebanon Crisis Response Plan, which covers...
but most of the amount goes to the Syrian refugees or to handling the crisis of the Syrian refugees?
No. A large amount of it goes under the umbrella of Lebanon Crisis Response Plan, which was a plan founded to support countries around, in a regional context, around Syria to if you want to alleviate the economic difficulties coming from illegal migration or migration. But even within this umbrella, even within this package, our line was that 50-50 goes to host communities, Lebanese host communities, and to Syrian refugees.
Your Excellency, when other governments or other embassies offer $1 million, we hear all the media talking about it. Why doesn't it talk so much about the German involvement in Lebanon? Is it your fault or is it the media's fault?
I'm not sure whose fault this is. I think what we like to see this is an investment and a partnership. We are working together with Lebanese partners to facilitate, to alleviate, and to mitigate. So it's not seen from our side as a downward approach. We are eye to eye at one level with the Lebanese partners, doing together what we can do with this amount. So why this is not being reported widely, that we are the second largest donor, I don't know. I'm trying my best to do this, but of course there's always potential to do better. Yeah, sure. I mean, I take this back home as a constructive criticism to look at my communication colleagues and what we can do better.
Your Excellency, we have talked about the crisis Lebanon is facing today. As we all know, Lebanon is facing multiple crises. Do you fear that the crisis Lebanon is facing might increase the number of refugees to the European continent?
I'm not sure because we have multiple studies showing that migrants want to stay as close as possible to where they come from, as close as possible to the country they are fleeing from. So I feel it's quite natural that a lot of Syrian refugees came to Lebanon, to Turkey and to Jordan to stay close and to see whenever there's an opportunity to go back, that they can go back. So there is also studies by UNHCR showing consistently over the years that a very large majority, 80-90% of Syrian refugees want to leave as soon as they can back to Syria. Just the situation is not so that they can do it right now, but there is no among Syrian refugees there is no willingness unnecessarily to stay longer where they are now, but they want to go back. Of course, there are many impediments to this.
How is Germany practically helping Lebanon to alleviate the burden of the refugees as a host country?
We have, as I said, since 2011, financed large parts within the framework of the Lebanon crisis response plan. We go, for instance, in the field of education. We are paying for school, the second shift school for Syrian refugee children. We are paying building of schools. We're paying for teachers in that respect. We are giving large amounts to World Food Programme to hand out food vouchers, or now what we're having cards, small cards, where you have a certain amount of money on the card, so you can go and buy food in a shop. We try by cash for work programs to pay directly workers who then do work in the framework of infrastructure and so on. We've been investing a lot in water and wastewater infrastructure. Unfortunately, I must say this is a very dismal chapter in Lebanon, because you hardly find anywhere a wastewater plant that is actually functioning. So, but we've been trying to do this. These are some of the main areas: education, water, wastewater, job generation.
Electricity.
Electricity is a completely different, a different subject. We have, as a government, we are not investing in electricity infrastructure. This is, we think, the task of the country where we are. But we're more looking at water, wastewater, than electricity.
It's remarkable to say that Germany is not involved in any way in developing the electricity sector in Lebanon?
Not as a government, but of course there are big German companies, experts in electricity generation that have been dealing with Lebanon. Sure, Siemens, for instance, and others.
Have you been around this fight? Have you seen it or?
Yeah, we have. I mean, there was Siemens CEO was coming to Lebanon together with our Chancellor Angela Merkel. At the time, I was not here, so everything about this episode I only know from hearsay. But Siemens has been active as a German company, trying to provide support for the Lebanese electricity sector, even after that and during my period. Of course, we are in touch with Siemens, sure.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the German role, we move forward. There was a talk about the agreement between Lebanon and the IMF and the grant that could be given to Lebanon.
Yes.
But we've seen many obstacles that hindered the completion of this agreement.
Yes.
Do you think that the grant from the IMF can help alleviate the crisis? And what's Germany doing in this regard?
Yeah, there is the IMF staff level agreement, and it was initialed in April this year, combined with a couple of prior actions, 8 or 10 prior actions. And the idea was that these prior actions will be fulfilled before the staff level agreement goes into the board of the IMF. Where then the main stakeholders would discuss the issue and support it or not. Unfortunately, these prior actions have not been fulfilled yet. So we are waiting as international community, as IMF, wait for the fulfillment of those prior actions. You know this is bank restructuring, unified exchange rate.
Political reform.
The political reforms are not part of this prior action, but budget and so on. There are 8 or 10 prior actions. Of course, the amount that will be set free by the IMF sounds little, 3 billion for 4 years. So, what is it compared to the needs Lebanon has? But the main advantage for this of such an IMF agreement would be that other international financial institutions and countries would then be in the position to say, okay, we have a kind of guarantee with the IMF agreement, therefore we are now courageous enough to take the risk to go back to business with Lebanon. Other international financial institutions like the EIB, the EBRD, and I guess also some of the Arabic development funds would be willing, I guess, to leverage more money. So the 3 billion from the IMF are just a tiny part of what would be possible to be set free after the agreement.
From the actions of the political class in Lebanon and from the immensity of the crisis, do you see a light at the end of the tunnel?
Too early, maybe.
Too early.
It's, what we see is that we have in April 8, 10 prior actions, but we are missing the political will to do these reforms that are necessary. We are missing the commitment, the sense of urgency of politicians, not only the government, but also in parliament and other political actors in Lebanon to be willing to fulfill these reforms that are needed, not just to get an IMF agreement, but for Lebanon in itself. Even if you don't get the IMF agreement, it will be important, it will be necessary to do these reforms, even if there were no money on the table. So since we are not getting closer in terms of fulfillment of the reforms, I see difficulties, and really I see my task in encouraging whoever is a decision maker, whoever can do something in this context, encouraging them to actually do it and not lose more time.
Your Excellency, do you think that an agreement with the IMF is the solution, or do you see other factors at the play?
From my perspective, there's only the solution of the IMF, because the IMF solution will bring further funds will also allow individual donors to be more generous, to allow for more leeway, because we have seen that there is reforms being going on and so on. But what we're looking at with the IMF agreement is mostly economic reforms. We also need political reforms. We need independence of justice. We need accountability. So the IMF is one thing. It's not the end of the reform track.
Talking about justice after the Beirut blast and in the midst of the financial crisis, how does Germany view the Lebanese justice system?
Okay.
Can you see it?
I can see it, and I'm in touch with the justice minister and judges and lawyers, of course, and we are supporting with some of our projects access to justice, independence of judiciary, and analysis and advocacy for independence of judiciary. But what I can see now, I arrived on end of July 2020, a week before the blast happened. What I can see since 4th of August 2020 is a complete unwillingness to deal with the problem. I have had ministers who are responsible asking me how the situation is in the port, because they have not been there after the blast. So I think it's, we see the judge, Tariq Bitar, being prevented by more than 30 lawsuits and complaints from doing his work. I think this is an abuse of lawsuits, of preventing justice to be to come and justice to be served to justice to be served to the victims and their families, because they are waiting for justice and accountability.
Mr. Ambassador, let's be honest. The 4th of August blast, is it beyond the Lebanese power to be solved?
Is
it a bit regional and international more than a national thing to be discussed internally?
To be discussed, yeah, maybe, absolutely. But I think what we're looking at is a national disaster. This is negligence. This is lack of accountability, lack of responsibility. So I think this needs to be solved first and foremost in the national system, in the national competence. If that's not possible, then, of course, there is maybe the way to look from an international perspective. And I think, personally, I think there should be an international perspective. I've lost a colleague on the 4th of August. She was killed immediately in the blast, and there's a second German citizen who was killed in the blast. And I've been criticized also by ministers that I am too interested in justice. And I say this is also my concern, because I have two German citizens being killed. So it is also my concern that they are being served justice. And I cannot accept that the Lebanese justice system is or the Lebanese system is blocking this investigation.
But talking about international interference, we've seen the French President Emmanuel Macron, right after the blast,
Yes.
he visited Beirut, he walked on its streets, and he pledged to unveil the truth. Yet after a few months, he was accused of exploiting this tragedy for his country's political benefit.
In the beginning, I don't think any international or no one from the international community asked for an international investigation, because really the competence and the responsibilities with the national investigation. But seeing that this is not happening, we need to think of other ways. And we have in Germany, we have a case file on the two German citizens. We have a prosecutor following up on the case. And the same is true for other countries, France as well. There's prosecutors working on the case. So I'm sure that they will not get off the track and will not stop investigating until there is justice.
But in Germany, it's a judicial...
it's a judicial file.
Yes, but in France, the president intervened. So it went to political, but we've seen no solution whatsoever, no answer whatsoever.
It is, I'm not saying that I'm happy with the fact that there is no international investigation on this, and there are different ways to do this. I think it's about time, to see what can be done internationally. This is never an ambition or never an initiative by one country. And that is, in my point of view, the difficulty. You need a group of countries sitting together and saying, this is enough for us. We have had victims. We need to know the truth, and so on. I personally hope that it's coming to this. There are ways, fact-finding mission or international observers looking into this and so on. I'm not a legal expert, but I think people have done a lot of work on the possibilities of doing this. So I personally hope that we come to that point.
How do you assess the fact that a president of a republic was not able to get any answer regarding such a tragedy, who is Emmanuel Macron? Do you have an answer for this? Why didn't he find an answer?
No, I don't have an answer for that, and I'm not having a position on what the French president did or not did. I know that together with France we have been very instrumental in setting up, for instance, the sanctions regime in the European Union with a perspective of Lebanon. So I cannot see that there is any hesitancy in what can be done, at least not for France or Germany, to try to bring, for instance, the sanctions regime about, or to look carefully into what can be done.
You've been in Lebanon since before the blast, and you've seen all the crises. The Lebanese people are dying, they're starving, with no war. The situation is dire. Why don't we see Germany or any other country being tougher on the politicians? Why you're being so merciful with the Lebanese politicians after so many tragedies?
I don't see where you see that I'm merciful. Our line.
We want to know how you're punishing
yes,
them.
Our line. It's not about punishment in that sense, but our line has been for quite some time that there will be no substantial support without conditions, no substantial support without reforms. The so-called 3RF framework says reform, recovery, reconstruction. This is not just an accumulation of words with R, it's a timeline. Reform, recovery, reconstruction. So also we are saying that you need to reform before you get money, like the IMF agreement. It says not you get the 3 billion, but it says you have to do, and then you get the 3 billion. World Bank loans coming here. Look at the loan for the electricity agreement, gas agreement with Egypt and Jordan. What we need is reforms being done in the electricity sector, and then the World Bank is ready to give. So I think we are actually as tough as we can in terms of conditioning support we are giving to Lebanon. I don't see us being merciful, and me personally and many other ambassadors, especially from the European Union, in any conversation we are having with anyone in the political field, we put these points up.
We want to dive deeper with you in Germany's involvement in Lebanon. But before that, we're going to give you a short break. We're going to watch a short report. It was prepared by Michel. Michel, in this report, he talked about all the activities that you have supported or you're involved into in Lebanon. We're going to see the report and then we're going to come back.
Okay.
كثير بنسمع عن نشاطات ومشاريع عم تتنفذ بعدد من البلدات والمدن اللبنانية وعم يستفيد منها كثير من الأشخاص. ولكن قليل اللي بيعرفوا أنه هالمشاريع عم تتنفذ بدعم من الدولة الألمانية الاتحادية عبر شركاء دوليين ومحليين لها وبالتعاون مع الحكومة اللبنانية، بحيث عم تشتغل ألمانيا على برامج بتدعم جميع فئات المجتمع بلبنان، بالإضافة لتحفيز النساء لزيادة مشاركتهم بالحياة السياسية وبالشأن العام محلياً ووطنياً. كما أنه عم تساهم بدعم الشباب والشابات للمشاركة بصنع القرار على مختلف المستويات، إلى جانب البرامج الهادفة لتعزيز الحكم الرشيد ومبادئ الديمقراطية والشفافية ومحاربة الفساد. ولابد من الإشارة أيضاً إلى الدور اللي عم تقوم فيه ألمانيا بتطوير البنى التحتية والمرافق الحيوية وعدد من القطاعات الرسمية والخاصة. Mr. Ambassador, after watching the report, surprisingly we have saw that the German embassy and Germany is cooperating with the Lebanese government and the governmental institutions. I want to ask you, is there any trust left with this government and with the Lebanese officials and the Lebanese official institutions, and how to achieve change in these circumstances?
Honestly, not diplomatically.
As a government, we need to work with governments. We cannot work with a so-called NGO state. So we have, our partners are governments. Also in the case of Lebanon, we support LAF because we think this is an actor which not only serves security, but it's a solid actor we can trust. So we are instrumental in setting up the coastal radar system, and I just signed a few days ago an agreement to give money for medicine and so on. So we support them. Yes. But in general, of course, we need to work with governments and through governments. But we have our reserves on some of the institutions, and we have already had examples where we stop our support because the cooperation doesn't work as we wanted. Mm-hmm.
What are the projects or programs offered to Lebanese youth during this period? Talking about projects and programs by Germany.
We have all kind of programs that include also youth. Mm-hmm. But we also have, in the framework of our stabilization, we have support for youth programs. We have also in the framework of our support for instance, Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund, where we are so far, I think, the only donor. Also projects with young women and young girls. So it is an important aspect of the support we are giving to Lebanon.
Yes. Talking about youth today, nowadays the immigration of youth is in an awful increase. Many youth are leaving Lebanon and searching for better job opportunities and better lives outside Lebanon. How is the German embassy in Beirut dealing with the immigration seekers?
We have, of course, the offers of visa for students and work. We have, I think, an increased number of applicants for these programs. But I think in general, I want to say that I fully understand this motivation of young people leaving and trying to find a better job or a better opportunity than the ones that are offered right now in Lebanon, because the situation is very difficult. So I have a lot of understanding for this.
You've mentioned that you don't like dealing with an NGO state. Are we turning into an NGO state?
I don't think so. I mean, Lebanon is famous for having tens of thousands of NGOs, and a large part of them are politically and confessionally and personally influenced. We're trying to do our best in due diligence to sort those out and not give money to institutions or NGOs that work for individuals or parties. And of course, we have an interest in supporting NGOs because we think this is coming from the roots. This is the people. Yes, this is what you can feel. You are very close to what motivates people and what drives them. But I don't think we are. This is not an NGO state. And as I said, we love to work together with NGOs, and we see a lot of possibilities there.
I was surprised by your how you said that the NGOs come from the roots, they come from the people. And in Lebanon, many political parties, they consider the NGOs as a blemish or an accusation for the others, and they tell them, oh, you work for NGOs, you're selling the country. Talking about this and the roots and the people, you've heard of the 17th of October uprising, which occurred in Lebanon on a very large scale. And in the wake of the parliamentary elections, do you think that the voice of the Lebanese people has been heard?
Look, we have had the largest participation of women in this parliament ever, which is not a large one. But at least 8 women participating as members of parliament.
And not enough.
Not enough, absolutely not enough. We have change members of parliament, people who are not necessarily linked to any other of the big parties. So I think it is encouraging to see this development. Definitely, I would say we are looking carefully at the last 6 months. What happened? How did they position themselves? Where is the coalition coming from? And how do members of parliament, the new members of parliament, develop? And what is there a cooperation possible? Can it bring change? It really depends on how this parliament is acting. At the moment, what I can see is that there is still, in many fields, no sense of urgency. All the reforms that need to be done, some of them need to be done also in parliament. And so far, I'm not seeing a lot of it. So my appreciation level is still below the...
Your last post on Twitter, an empty frame and the Lebanese flag. And you've written, until when? Until when? I mean the frame, the presidential frame.
Yes. I didn't position this. This is from an office, of a government office. I took it in a government office, and I think it's quite telling. People want that the president is coming, want that the system works. So I'm also asking, because it is important for us to see that the system is working. I've been accused of intervening into internal affairs, and some of the tweets that react to it have been citing the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, and I have to say this is not true. In the Vienna Convention, Article 3, it is clear that the tasks of a diplomat, of an embassy, is also to presenting the interests of my own country and to protect the interests of my own country. And of course, I have an interest in a functioning system in Lebanon, because otherwise there will be no reform coming, there will be no progress, and there will be no change. And then there's a question, why should we as German taxpayers invest in this country? Invest in this country.
We wanted to invest in the electricity sector, not just wastewater.
Ask again the question about investing.
But this is unprecedented worldwide. Almost 40 years after the war, and still we have an electricity problem. You don't want to answer.
Yes. What can we do? I was just reading a recent book on Lebanon, and it said it's from 2019. And when I arrived in 2020, we had, I think, 10 hours of electricity. And now we have maybe one. Mondays and Wednesdays. So, of course, this is a catastrophe. And it's a systemic problem. It's not just to be healed by calling a company from abroad. This is a systemic, we have a law from 2002, the oversight on the Électricité du Liban, which has not been fulfilled. So there's plenty of things to be done before it is worthwhile for a company to come to the country and fix the electricity.
Your Excellency, talking about reform and change on all aspects, does Germany help Lebanon in supporting the LGBTQ rights and fighting domestic violence and child abuse?
We have several projects. We have projects supporting, for instance, the migrant workers. We have also projects supporting LGBTQ, and I intend to not only continue these projects, especially for LGBTQ, but also to intensify these projects, because I think it is important to make clear that human rights are for everyone. And everyone should be able to enjoy it. Yeah. So I think this is the way we look at it.
But some people will say, in a crisis like this crisis, why is it important to support LGBTQ or violence against women and children?
Well, because this is part of the society. This is how society needs to be built. This is what can lead to popular and inclusion of people who can then do their job and can live in a way with enjoying human rights, as we all need to do. And this is what reforms are heading towards and what reforms should be leading to.
What other cultural and artistic projects supported by Germany and Lebanon?
We have an agency, if you want, the Goethe Institute, who does a lot. They are independent, therefore the word agency is not really applicable. Yeah. But they are working in the cultural field. We also have some projects as embassy in the cultural field, but compared with what the Goethe Institute can do and some of the political foundations we are also having here can do, the German embassy project title is only little. So we do Christmas carols and some concerts, but really I want to recommend Goethe Institute and its cultural expanse and their programs.
Yeah.
But you're interested in the cultural aspect of this country.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I am trying to travel as much as I can in the country and to see as much as I can from what cultural expression can do, because this is an important part of politics also. It's an important part of society. And therefore, yes, I'm trying to attend as many events as I can and see within the countryside what there is to be seen in terms of culture.
Mr. Ambassador, if for one day you can be set free of your diplomatic mission and be a Lebanese citizen for one day, what would be the first thing you would do?
Oh my God. Go hiking, I guess. I think I would
We can go hiking now. The Lebanese citizens. We Lebanese don't go hiking.
Free of responsibilities, of duties.
Yeah, do some yoga, get off the responsibilities. What would I do? I think really I find it important that the movement you mentioned, 17th October, and the demonstrations we saw afterwards, already now, for someone who arrives now, this is the past. Nobody can remember. When have we seen the last popular unrest? I think it was when the dollar was more than 20,000 lira. Now we have 42,000,
yes,
and no one is on the street. So really, I think if I were Lebanese, I would reconsider what I want. What do I want from my life? What do I want to achieve? And what are the ways I need to go in order to achieve this? No practical exercise.
I was touched by what you said, because we should first know that we have a country, we have a nationality, and we should cherish this as a first step before being angry at others or angry at the past or not knowing what the future brings. Michel, do you have any last question for His Excellency?
I want to say thank you for being with us today. I'm so happy to interview you in this episode. I want to ask you, what's your message for the Lebanese youth?
Don't despair. I think there is a potential to change, really. And I also see that even people who are older realize now that it's not possible to go the old ways. It's not possible to follow this feudal attitude of looking towards the Zaim and expecting everything from them. There is a state, and this state needs to be taken into account. This needs to show accountability. So I think it's worthwhile, because it's the only chance there is. If you want a state, you need to go for it. You need to fight for it.
We've come to the end of our episode. We want to tell you that we were honored and delighted to have you with us outside the walls of diplomacy. And it's been a great honor having you on the show and listening to your answers. And allow me, since you understand Arabic, I'm gonna say the last sentence in Arabic. السفير الألماني كان معنا اليوم، ونحن شعب كتير منحب التاريخ ودايما منتذكر امبارح. بس إذا مننتبه أنه ألمانيا هي أكثر دولة دمرت بالعصر الحديث بحربين عالميتين، وبالحربين ألمانيا تدمرت كليا وخسرت كل مقدراتها من البشرية للاقتصادية وللسياسية. بس اليوم ألمانيا هي واحدة من أقوى الاقتصادات بالعالم. هي اليوم دولة قادرة تبعت أكثر من 2.7 مليار دولار لدولة مثل لبنان تتساعدها. وليش نحن ما منقول إنه نحن كمان شعب لبناني مثل ما في شعب ألماني أو حيالله شعب تاني بالعالم بيحب بلده، بيكفينا نحب بلدنا مش بس نحب زعيمنا، وهذا الشيء كفيل يغير كل المشهد. شكرا لكم، تصبحوا على خير.